What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day, whatever day you're watching this. Before I get started, please consider subscribing and liking this video. If you find any value or if you like anything I might have went over or covered in this video today, a simple like and subscribe will go a long way. As you guys know, I'm building this channel from the ground up, and with your continued support and consideration, it would mean a lot to me to keep going. But anyway, I got a treat for you guys today. This will be more tailored to the folks who are more in like the rookie or novice side of programming or coding, and basically I'll be going over some tips and giving you guys a few pointers and things to look out for when you're starting your programming journey. So without further ado, let's get straight into the video. All right, so you're a rookie coder, fresh out the gate, don't know what to do, don't know where to start, and you're looking for help, right? And you came across my beautiful face, and I'm here to help you. So what is coding, or some programmers in the programming world will call it programming. Really, the gist of coding is the ability to build whatever you want online. When we think about the web, when we think about the internet in general, we usually think about websites, social media, and things of that nature, of that sort. Now, if you know how to code, you can actually build that type of stuff by yourself for free. And it's a little bit of work, but it's definitely possible. It's definitely worth it at the end. So learning this skill, would bring you so much value. When you're trying to like build a website, or trying to build even an app. Just understanding how the internet works in general will put you so far ahead of 90% of the population online. The second thing you want to keep in mind about coding is that languages are very important, right? So when you're first starting out, the most common languages you're going to run into are like Python, JavaScript, C++, HTML, some SQL, Ruby, and there's many more. Now, some people actually focus just on one language, which I actually recommend you do if you're first starting out. And some people are like the jack of all trades. Some people like to mix in a little bit of Python and also JavaScript. And a lot of languages you can actually interconnect them as well. So HTML and JavaScript, for example, have different capabilities where you're actually able to connect the two and build some really cool things online. So when you're first getting started, you want to make sure to choose a good beginner-friendly language to learn. In my opinion, I recommend Python, because Python is typically the most beginner-friendly language, and everyone tends to gravitate more towards Python anyway in the programming world, and it's just easier to learn, versus like JavaScript or SQL or Ruby and things like that. So when you're first getting started, I definitely recommend Python or JavaScript. Now, some basics of programming include a few different things, right? And I'm gonna go through this list. When I go through this list, I'm gonna explain like each typical bullet point. So when we talk about variables, these are used to actually store data within within the IDE or coding environment. And variables have names and values. So similar to like math, how X and Y mean something, that would be the same case for variables in the programming world. The second thing are data types. And data types are different types of data that can be stored and manipulated by the program, such as like integers or whole numbers, floating point numbers, which are decimals, strings, which are like text, Boolean expressions, which are like true or false expression, and etc. Many more. The next one will be control structures. These dictate the flow of the program, and some key control structures include conditional statements, which allow the program to make decisions based on certain conditions. For example, like if or else statements. Another example of a control structure would be loops. And loops allow the program to actually execute a block of code repeatedly until a condition is met, right? So when we think about loops, think about like a constant circle, and you don't have to think too hard about this just now. I'm just like breaking down each individual bullet point. But when I talk about loops, I'm mainly talk about like conditions that, happen over and over again. Especially like when you talk about algorithms, you want things to happen continuously without having to really think about it. So loops are, a great way to do that. The next one would be functions or methods, some people like to call them. These are blocks of code that perform a specific task, and they also help in organizing code into reusable units. And they also facilitate a better modularity and readability, I should say. So when you think about a function, you can think about like something that you would define or give a name and tell it to do something, right? So say for example, I create a function to create a pizza, right? And within this function are like the ingredients in order to make the pizza. And there's also instructions on how to actually prepare the pizza and cook the pizza. So when you think about functions, you can think about things like that. Input and output are programs often needed to interact with users or other systems. Input involves receiving data from external sources, while output data involves displaying results or sending data elsewhere. Comments and documentation includes like, is basically a good programming practice, especially like when you're collaborating on a project with like other programmers. Comments are really used to like annotate what your code is doing, right? Because especially like when you're sharing your code on like GitHub, or if you're collaborating with like a team, you want to make sure that whoever else sees your program or your code understands what's going on. So comments are actually comments and documentation are a good way to do that. All right, so when we talk about error handling, we're usually talking about like, any error messages that might pop up, when you're writing code, which is actually very common. It's basically just a way for your IDE to tell you that you need to fix something. And, those are really good to, fix an issue or fix a problem that may be occurring within your code. So you can think of error handling like troubleshooting. Basically every time you run into an error, the IDE will scream at you and give you suggestions on how to fix it. But sometimes like all error messages aren't built the same. Like some error messages may mean one thing and it's actually another. So I would stare error messages. I would tread error messages, lightly. You know what I mean? Like it's not a big deal if you get something wrong, or if you mess up like uh, a comma somewhere, or if you miss like an exclamation point somewhere, because it's usually that simple. We'll talk more about that later. Basic algorithms and data structures basically include, like I was saying earlier, algorithms, which are basically like a list of instructions that you give a function or a program to do a certain thing. And we'll talk more about this later. But some data structures include like arrays, lists, dictionaries, things like that. And they're very essential for solving various programming problems efficiently. Um, the next one will be object-oriented programming, or OOP. Many modern languages use OOP principles, which involve organizing code into objects that interact with each other. This includes concepts like classes, objects, inheritance, polymorphism, and etc. And last but not least, integrated development environments, or IDE for short, are basically the thing that you're going to use to actually write your code, right? So you guys may have seen on the channel, I use something called Visual Studio Code, which is a very, very common Microsoft IDE, and it's not the most beginner friendly, but it's pretty top notch for what you're able to do within the IDE. But IDEs are great because it's what you're gonna fall on in order to actually write and launch your programs. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the basics of programming. And I'll make sure to list all of the resources below in the description if you guys have any questions, or if you want to explore some of these points further. So a few tips that I have for beginners, especially when you're first starting out coding, are, for one, start with the basics, right? Like, starting with the basics just basically means understanding the fundamental concepts like variables, data types, control structures, things like that. If or else statements and things like that are really gonna, help you out in the long run. The next one will be choose a beginner-friendly language. We already talked about that earlier. I suggest either Python or JavaScript. However, if you feel like you're a good multi-manager, you can probably go on to like learning SQL and things like that. But I would recommend, especially when you're first starting out, starting off with more simpler languages like Python and JavaScript. Third bullet point, actually, excuse me, be practice regularly. Practice. I know programming and coding sometimes can get a little tedious, but really, it's all about building that muscle and building that muscle memory, because coding is a skill, right? And it improves with practice, right? So try to code daily or regularly to enforce or to reinforce what you've learned and to build better problem solving skills. The fourth bullet point will be break problems down. So as I was talking about earlier, algorithms are basically steps or instructions on how to perform a certain task within a program. So breaking things down will really help you in your problem solving process, or in your problem solving muscle, and it will get you used to working in like a checklist format, right? Because when we talk about algorithms, that's really what it is. It's just basically a big checklist that the computer is listening to and making sure that it meets all the criteria. The fifth bullet point will be use online resources and tutorials. So like my first CS teacher would always say, Google is your friend, okay? Especially when it comes to programming. Do not be afraid to use resources online. Do not be afraid to use Google in general, because for one, it's free, right? And for 2, it's a resource, it's a tool, it exists for a reason. The next one would be, don't be afraid to make mistakes. All right, we all make mistakes, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's actually a good thing to fuck up in the coding world, because the minute you do, you learn so much within that time. You don't even remember why you were upset in the first place, right? But as soon as you start complaining constantly about things, that's when you're officially a programmer, right? The next bullet point would be, seek help and ask questions. So this kind of ties into the last bullet point, but don't be afraid to actually seek help and ask questions, because most likely you're not the only one with that same question, right? And I'm sure the answer will be out there somewhere, somehow. The next one will be build projects. I encourage you all to use a few resources that I'll have in the description below. Like I was talking about earlier, the main IDE that I use is Visual Studio Code, but there's plenty of IDEs online that are way more beginner friendly than VS Code, that you can definitely use to build simple projects. The next one will be actually reading and understanding different lines of code, right? So, go online and see what you can find. GitHub has a lot of, resources and also projects from people who might have uploaded their own, websites or codes. So I would encourage you to actually, get onto GitHub and actually looking at what people have already wrote, and checking out the comments that they might have left in some of their folders and notes. The next one will just be staying persistent and being patient. It's you never learn anything overnight, right? And coding is no exception. This stuff takes time, okay? So just understanding that and making sure that you put the necessary time in to actually succeed and thrive in this world will make an immense amount of difference when it comes to your personal individual journey. And the last bullet point would be understanding concepts, not just syntax. So what I mean by that is like just understanding, understanding that syntax is important. By syntax, I mean like the way you actually write code, the X and Y's I was talking about. But also focusing on understanding why you're using certain constructs or certain types of code, and how they fit into the broader context of programming, right? So let's go back to that pizza analogy I was talking about. The entire purpose of making this pizza function was to, not think about it, right? So I can have something I can fall back on in case I wanted to ever, make another pizza or add something to it, or even share my ingredients with, other people. So just keep that in mind when you're actually, going through your programming journey. And a few other things I just wanted to point out is just, stay updated with the latest technology and the latest news within, the programming world. Everything is always changing immensely, and there's so many resources and so many things to learn on a daily and consistent basis. There's no reason why you shouldn't be up to date. So I definitely recommend downloading a few forums, or a couple, or following a few tech content creators online that may update you on some things and news that's happening in the tech world. And I'll also put some resources below in the description in case you wanted to look at a few newsletters that I follow. And last but not least, just remember, learning to code is a journey, right? And enjoying that process is a part of the journey, right? Discovering new skills and problem solving is all a part of it. So, do not take this super seriously. Do not focus on the money first. However, the money is good. Do not put that as like your forefront reason on why you want to code, right? I encourage you to think outside the box and really think about what you can build with this skill, right? Like Microsoft, for example, was built from a guy. Microsoft came from a guy that had an idea on how to change the world different, or how to make the world different, right? Or how to make communication different in general, right? So I encourage that type of thinking, when you're actually going through your journey on how to code. So the last slide, just understanding it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? Please, please do not overwhelm yourself with all the stuff and all the jazz that comes with this world, right? And there is a lot to learn, but at the same time there's so much to focus on, right? There's so much to learn within one language, right? Python by itself has so many tips and tricks. So I encourage you to really focus on that one language initially, and really don't overthink it, right? Play with it, right? Like break stuff. Please break stuff, because the minute you do, the minute you're gonna understand like how fun it is really to code and really to like make something with this skill, right? So resist overthinking. Do not quit as soon as you run into like an error message or you get your first like error code. It's okay. We all get those messages. Trust me, even the best of us get those messages all the time. So do not overthink this thing. Please don't. The next one will be invite failure. Invite failure and invite it with open arms. Please, because the minute you fail, you know what you have to change later, right? And really, when it comes to coding, there's no right or wrong way to code, right? Things are so subjective to what you want your program to look like, or what you want your code to look like. There's really no right or wrong way to do it. Have fun. I'm gonna just keep regurgitating the same get-go, the same gist. Have fun with this, please, because that's going to be your motivation to keep going. And last but not least, good luck on your journey. I wish you all the best. Again, I'll put all the resources in the description below. And if you found any value in this video, please consider leaving a like and hit that subscribe button. Also turn on the bell notification so that you're notified every time I drop a new video. I'm gonna try to get more consistent, in the next couple months, so you guys can be expecting a few more drops from me, within the next couple months. But that's pretty much it for the video. Thank you guys for tuning in. Again, my name is Mike, and if you can't dream it, you can't code it. Remember that. Peace.